Hi, everyone. It's Blake Moore here. Thanks so much for joining me on this call and for either taking the call or calling in. Um, it's evening time, obviously, as you know. We try to mix things up a little bit. Our last one was at noon during kind of like trying to catch a lunch hour, and we're going later in the evening as you know. So thank you again for spending a little bit of time. This is the last one of the year, so the holidays are upon us, and look forward to sharing a little bit of insight and kind of an update from the last time that we were able to host one of these. With respect to that, if there is ever a time you wanted to refer back to a previous teletown hall, you can check that out. That's available on the website as well. Lots to talk about, and so I will provide a brief overview of what's happening here in Washington and a little bit some of what's going on back in the district, and then we'll jump right into questions and try to get to questions as soon as possible. Star 3 is if you want to jump in for a question queue. Star 3 for questions, and we'll try to get to as many as possible in this hour. And so I won't do too much of a preamble, so we can do as much of that. So Star 3 for questions, and then Star 6 is to sign up for the weekly e-newsletter, and that contains the best information that I can share with you all. You know, there is so much out there for you to consume, a lot of different angles, a lot of different narratives that get spun from very different news media outlets. And I have tried now I'm approaching 5 years in this role, and I have tried for one specific thing, and that is to be as candid, forthright as you possibly can with all of the things that are going on. You don't really have time to explain every little angle, every little aspect of the complex world of policy making. But I have truly looked back at my time and said that I've tried to be forthright. And these opportunities through my newsletter and through town halls like this give me a chance to share more context and not just hit the buzzword rhetoric type of stuff. And I've tried to cut through that rhetoric and into the reality as much as I possibly can. And I feel like all of the folks in the 1st District have come along this journey with me, and I'm thrilled to be in a position to continue to do this. Again, so Star 6 to ask a question, Star 3 to ask a question, and Star 6 to sign up for the newsletter. You can press those at any time throughout the call. The biggest legislative action of this week, and I think the most important thing to accomplish before we break for any holiday season, is the National Defense Authorization Act, or the NDAA. This is the annual bill Congress passes to set defense policy. It authorizes spending levels for our military and establishes guidelines for the Department of Defense. Representing Hill Air Force Base, I talk about it a lot, spend a lot of time when I'm back in the district interacting with the leadership there and attending various events, and then the entire apparatus around Hill Air Force Base. There's many, many other companies and supporting network, whether it be advanced manufacturing and the like, to really truly support such an important military installation. That's one of the best things I get to do in this role. So when we finish the NDAA every year, it's a bit of a sigh of breath of fresh air and a little bit of relief. It's a big priority for the 1st District, and my team has always made that a big priority. This year, we worked closely with the Armed Services Committee to include legislation to improve hiring processes, retention, and recruitment. One big key win was a 3.8% pay raise for enlisted service members. We've enhanced domestic energy production, increased defense manufacturing jobs, and actually had some savings in here, nearly $20 billion of savings. We accomplished some things for the defense side of the budget in the reconciliation bill this summer as well. And as we continued on, we got this done. So this sets the policy and the levels. What now has to happen is finalizing the appropriations bill of defense, and that's one of the 12 appropriations bills. And that's always a Herculean effort as well to make sure that gets done. But there'll be a lot of focus on that before the end of January, when that would be due. That funding would be due by then, because we've extended until that point. And so that's a big effort to try to get done. Okay. So there's a lot about the NDAA. I won't get into much more of it, but happy to take more questions. Folks, follow our social media channels at Rep. Blake Moore. Of course, you can always check out the website at blakemore.house.gov to read more about press releases and other types of bills. Again, *3 for questions, and you can enter the question queue at any time. One other highlight of the week was seeing one of my bills pass out of the Ways and Means Committee. I worked with the Democrat out of Illinois, Congressman Brad Schneider, to introduce legislation halting counterfeit and pirated imports into the United States. This is passed unanimously out of committee, and it's key for giving the Customs and Border Patrol what they need to be able to properly report these types of just insidious work that goes on with counterfeit. It's a dangerous industry. There's major threats from this. Intellectual property thieves that are out there, black market traders, and everything. This bill will unlock real-time intelligence that it can share between CBP and the private sector to help shut down these networks and cut off the flow of counterfeit products before they even reach American shores. So a lot of times you see similar patterns with this type of stuff, and we're trying to nip that so we can share it with various stakeholders and move past it. It was again a very, very productive committee meeting this week. All of our bills, all but one, actually passed out with very strong bipartisan support on the trade side of things, and looking forward to engaging that. There's trade deals we have with Africa that everybody's been very supportive of, and even in this hemisphere, and then individual things like mine. And we had 9 total bills that got passed out of committee, and should have legs for getting through the congressional process, the legislative process. So excited about that, and we'll kind of keep folks informed. Let's do it. Let's jump right into it. I want to get to as many questions as possible tonight, and again, *3 to enter the question queue, and *6 to join our newsletter. Lots more things I could be updating you on, but I think oftentimes as we see these get covered with some questions. So let's jump right into it. We're going to go first to David in South Ogden. David in South Ogden. You on?
Yes.
Excellent. I can hear you great. Fire away.
Okay, my question is regarding in your newsletter, you highlighted the $6.25 billion private donation going into these accounts for Michael Dell, but I don't see that there's been any mention that this is going to cost the taxpayers around $15 billion over the next 10 years to fund the federal portion of this contribution, and it's also going to result in families having to deal with a very complicated opt-in process. It involves new IRS forms, long-term restrictions on how the money can even be used. And I'm much more in favor of, and I wish it would have happened, expanding the child tax credit, which would have been far simpler, would reach many more families, and according to most economists, says that it does far more to reduce child poverty immediately. So why choose an expensive, complicated program that's going to only benefit a narrow group of newborns instead of strengthening the child tax credit, which would help all families across Utah raising children right now?
Oh, great question, and thanks for following along so closely. These have been issues that I've been heavily involved with. So the real simple response to it, and I'll dig into just a little bit of the specifics, we actually were able to accomplish both. So you'll remember, so child tax credit, let's talk about that just briefly. Child tax credit was $1,000 back in 2017. Republicans doubled it to $2,000, and that expired at the end of this year. So in a couple of weeks, if we had not gotten that bill done in July, that would have expired, and it would have gone back down to $1,000. But instead, we were able to make it permanent and increase it with it being tied to inflation and index going forward. So in 2017, it was $1,000 before 2017. Once 2017 hit till today, it moved up to $2,000 as a tax credit for each child, helping families with kids 1 through 17. And then what we did is we got it to $2,200, and so we kept it permanent. It'll never drop below that point based on our legislation, and I think it's a very accepted. Even when the Democrats had the White House, House, and Senate, they supported it as well. So this has become one of those things that is broadly bipartisan. So we increased it and then made it permanent, so it'll never drop back down to that 1,000 or the 2,000, and it'll be 2,200, and then it'll grow from there. And so now it's going to be indexed more to inflation. And I believe if you believe in a tax policy, you should index it to inflation because you lose time value money over the course of it if you just make it, and it feels like almost more political if you just say, hey, we're going to set it at this number. So we were thrilled to be able to get that type of enhancement of the child tax credit. I led that effort. I had the Family First Act. We wanted to, we really pushed on this, and I'm from the youngest state in the nation, so we would be sitting around. There's 26 of us that were basically working on this bill. We're Republicans on Ways and Means, and there was a lot of jokes going around there that, oh, yeah, sure, Blake cares about the young people because he's from the young state or this or that. Or Utah, they always have a bunch of kids. Well, I also had to brag about us because we're the only one replacing the birth rate. And not only, there's a couple states, but we have a strong family community. We want to support families and make that grow. So we did a lot of enhancements to that. So we're excited about that. Regarding the Trump account, this is a new paradigm shift. This is a new idea that we've got to give it a shot. So there is a cost to it. You said $15 billion over 10 years. We contribute $1.2 trillion a year to Social Security. I mean, we're not even talking in the same realm of even relatability between those two numbers. $15 billion over 10 versus annually $1.2 trillion in Social Security. And what we're trying to do here with the Invest America accounts, aka the Trump accounts, is give a little bit of seed money to the newest generation, so they can watch that money grow. They can have access to that account. They won't be able to touch it for at least 18 years. At that point, it can be basically transferred over to a traditional IRA. But there's limitations on what they can use at that point, and then at 25, they can have a little more access to it. My hope is that people will see the value of two really important programs: 529 accounts, which I love, and I think everybody should engage in, and grandparents should look to help out, grandkids. It's a great way to invest in their future, and that's for the education side, and it's strictly for education. The leftover money on those can be transferred over to an IRA or something like an IRA later, but that's a focus. Tax advantage accounts, get those into kids' opportunities so they can be prepared for some education costs. The Trump account world is designed to get them invested in their future, and companies, philanthropies, family, they can now start contributing. As of July of next year, they can start contributing and doing it so these things can grow. The average person doesn't save for their IRA until they're 30. And around there. Don't quote me on that exact number. But think about how different it's going to be if this next generation starts something at 0, at 1 year old, and then all of a sudden they get into a rhythm of saving on their own and watching this go and recognizing the value of compound interest. Folks, Social Security there's some real major issues 10 years out from now. And I am hoping we can create a hedge and get people invested in saving for their own retirement even earlier than we already do. So I love both these programs. They're very different. The child tax credit is more of a relief to families with the burden of the cost of children, but the other one is for their future only. And I'm really excited about potentially being a bit of a game changer here. Now, this is new. right? But we have learned that 529 accounts work really well, and this can be a similar type of program. It's a different tax advantage, and I think of it more as the long term. So I am going to use those 529s for my kids as best as I can and focus on getting them excited about their education. And then the Invest America accounts, I want them to be thinking 50 years out. And we want to change the way people think about their retirement. So thank you so much for being involved. I love how informed you are, and always happy to engage more on it. We're going to go to Ogden with Amy. Amy in Ogden.
Hello.
Yes, I can hear you great.
Hi. Okay. So my quick question is, I realize that you're not in the Senate, and I realize this is kind of a done deal, but I was just wondering, why would you vote against extending the subsidies for Obamacare? That would
Excellent. Great
benefit.
Question.
Yeah.
Yeah, great question. So we don't have a vote on it in the House. Like you said, there's a lot going on in the Senate, and there was commitments made to make that vote. I want to make sure I overly clarify something. So when we talk Obamacare or ACA subsidies, the Obamacare subsidies that have been in place since 2014 are not expiring. Those are continuing on. There's no timeline with those. Those were set to be permanent back in the early part of that decade, and those are continuing on. Those won't be touched, and that's the bulk of the subsidies. The ones that are the portion of the tax or the ACA subsidy that's expiring is what's called the enhanced premium tax credits. The COVID era, they were established in 2021, and they were set by the Democrats. The Democrat ran legislation when they had the White House, and Senate. They ran legislation to do the enhanced tax credits for 4 years, and they set that expiration date at the end of this year. But a lot of people get those two things confused. Not saying you are, Amy, but I'm saying a lot of folks do, because it's easy to, obviously, ACA subsidies are expiring. People think that, oh no, it's just the enhanced version. And my biggest issue with the enhanced version is something that I put a video out this week on. What it does is it moves a lot of premiums to $0. And when you do that, you have a significant higher risk of fraud associated with the program. So, for example, the original Obamacare subsidies, the ones that are continuing on, set the parameters that if you make, let's say, $20,000 a year, let's call it $15,000 a year. It's a low income, $15,000 a year. That's actually considered 100% of federal poverty line. Then you are required to pay if you sign up for an Obamacare plan, you're required to pay 2% of your income towards your plan, and that equals out to be about $300. And so you pay $300 annually for a plan, and then if your plan costs $4,000, the federal government will send taxpayer dollars directly to the insurance company to cover the additional $3,700. Okay. At least in that situation, so you're paying $300, and again, you're not making much money, I get that, but at least there is a transaction that takes place. At least there is some type of ownership from that individual that is, hey, I know I have the plan. No one signed me up on my behalf, but I didn't realize I have the plan. I'm investing in this plan. I'm paying 2% of it, but I know that I have it, and I'm going to try to take advantage of it and leave it. Since the EPTCs established in 2021, you saw a significant percentage of plans that never saw any activity. They never went into the doctor. They never used them. And there's obvious suggestions that if that be the case, these plans were signed up for, and insurance companies are making the revenue off of it, but there's no claims going to it. And there's a high risk of fraud there, because there's just no check and balance on, at least I'm paying something. Even if you were paying $5, $10, you would know you would have to go through the process to get that established. There would be more awareness of that particular thing. So that's a really big problem. The other major problem with where these subsidies work is that it has not proven to do what it was designed to do, to premiums will go down over time, or we're going to be a part of build enough people in this program that the cost of premiums will go down. The premiums have gone up significantly since 2014. When you add a subsidy directly to a market like this, we have seen upwards to 80% over the course of, let's say, 10, 12 years, where Obamacare premiums have gone up significantly. This year's no different. They're going to continue to go up. And then with the enhanced portion of it, those are going to expire as well, and there's going to be an additional cost associated with it. The main focus of Republican legislation, and we have about 10 to 12 things that we're hoping to be able to finalize, at least get out of the House. They are all related towards cutting out middlemen costs, cutting out some of the glut that doesn't really provide value in this, like PBM reform. Health savings accounts are a really strong program where you can use these dollars pre-tax and go towards even paying some premium and other type of health care expenses. Those have proven to be ways that you can actually reduce the overall cost of health care, not just subsidize it. So obviously not supportive of it. This has not been an approach that Republicans have gone with in the past. There's been two major votes on this, 2012 when they established them. Those were Democrat-only votes. And now we're in 2021 is when they did the enhanced version that are set to expire. Again, COVID era, set to expire. Here's the deal. So Republicans are going to want to get a lot of that individual legislation done. We'll keep working on that. There is a major issue with EPTCs also that doesn't really come up much, and it's super convoluted and difficult to understand when you look at how it all works. But the very simple approach of it is because the subsidies have never been done under, let's say, a Republicans have never voted on these. These have always been when Democrats had the White House, House, and Senate. They've never had a Hyde Amendment put on it. And the Hyde Amendment ensures that no federal tax dollars go towards funding abortions. And that's been a bipartisan amendment for a long time. It's in every annual appropriations bill. But because these have never had Republican votes on it, the Hyde Amendment has never been required to pass it. And there are numerous states that use these Obamacare exchanges and the subsidies associated with it with abortion care, right, and abortion services, sorry. And that's a real sticking point. And so Republicans have never voted for EPTCs or any type of Obamacare subsidy, and the abortion side of it is creating it makes it a very, very difficult policy aspect. Again, Republicans are trying to focus on reducing overall health care costs for everyone, employer-provided care, whether you're on Medicaid. We want to be able to put some downward pressure on the overall cost. It's not an easy thing to do. It's very complex. Hopefully that's a helpful description of why. And this is going to be this is a year where premiums are going up significantly. It's going to be tough, and we're trying to finalize and get some of this done as much as possible. Much of this is going to bleed into the first quarter of next year as well, and I'll continue to provide updates. Thank you for that, Amy. Longer answer there, folks. That's obviously very top of mind to a lot of people, and so thanks for sticking with me as I try to explain the context again. We're going to go to Joshua and Clinton. Again, *3 for questions and *6 for newsletter, but if you want to ask any questions, *3. Joshua and Clinton.
Hey, Blake. I work on Hill Air Force Base and the federal wage system, and a lot of the guys that we work with, because of the cost of living here in Utah has gone through the roof, and we really haven't gotten the raises like, say, the ACT demo side has gotten. And we've heard something about locality pay for the federal wage system on Hill Air Force Base. I was just curious if you had heard anything about that.
Yep, locality pay has been an annual issue. I heard about it before I was even officially elected, and it's something that we deal with in the each National Defense Authorization Act. In the 2025 NDAA, so last year's NDAA, we required part of our submissions to that NDAA was to require a report for OPM, the Office of Personnel Management, to tell Congress how locality pay is calculated, requiring some transparency on how they go about doing this. Folks, Hill Air Force Base is not getting calculated correctly. And we all know that. We all see the cost of homes and housing and living expenses in the Wasatch Front. It's the top economy in the country. We rank upwards to top in everything we do. And that's such an amazing thing to celebrate. But it ultimately, some of the side effects that come with it are an increased awareness and interest in being here. And it's a really tough issue. It's tough for, we've been probably pigeonholed to certain levels of this before, and we're ramping up more quickly. Our economy is hotter than most other areas, and we're not getting the same level of equivalency, if you will. So this is obviously a large focus in the Hill Air Force Base. We've got the IRS, we've got Tooele Army Depot, big military community with so many federal workers. This is something that we chip away at every single year, but we feel we got a good win, and this transparency is going to lead to the right direction. But I know you're still feeling the pains of it now, so it's not solving the problem, but it's doing everything we possibly can. I mean, we work with this on the administration, so there's rulemaking that can be done in this case. Again, with the NDAA, it's tough, and we work directly with Hill leadership constantly. This is, of my regular check-ins with them. We're always providing the updates. So thank you for being focused on that, and know that this one would be the magic wand that I would, if I had, on regards to this issue. It would solve a lot of problems, but it's because it is such an issue because so many things are going right in our state, and this is one of the tough aspects of that. So thank you very much. Okay, we're going to go to Denise in Park City. Denise?
Hey, Blake. Thanks for holding this town hall so we can all have a conversation with you. Appreciate that.
Absolutely.
You touched on healthcare affordability, and part of reducing healthcare costs also includes better outcomes for patients, and that means getting new innovative medical technologies to patients sooner. And I know you've been working on legislation to help do that. There is a lot of innovation in med tech taking place right here in Utah. So I just wanted to see if you thought there was movement on that bill and if it might get over the finish line this year.
Denise, I didn't recognize you right off the bat. Folks, Denise is an amazing champion for Utah's biotech industry, and we've had a chance to work together quite a bit, and I didn't notice it right when I said the name, but of course, Denise in Park City. Great to hear from you. Thank you. One of the pieces of legislation she's referring to, it's called MSIT. What it is Medicare CMS coverage for innovative technology, breakthrough technology. It is not covered under Medicare to what it should be, and it makes it difficult to get patients all the latest and greatest that we have out there to improve quality of life and find treatment options for folks. What we've seen over time is in the first Trump administration, this came out and they moved this in rulemaking through CMS, and it had positive effects. Things were going in the right direction. President Biden, he scaled it back, but still recognized the value of it. It was called something a little different, but we scaled it back. And that's when I came to Congress, and I started on an effort to move this MSIT aspect through legislative process. And we had success. We got it done. It ends up being quite bipartisan. And there's a few dissenting voices on it. And then that was last Congress, and one of my good friends from Cincinnati ended up retiring, and I was able to become the lead on this bill because I was working on it a lot with him. And then when he left Congress for picking up this new year, I became the lead on it. And the first thing I did was meet with Robert Secretary RFK Jr. and got commitments from him and from Dr. Oz that they were invested and that this was the direction that they wanted to go. Passed it out of committee. We're moving it through. All the right things are happening to make this possible. Then the sort of dissenting voices on the Dem side are waning, to be honest with you. In fact, we got some people that voted against it last Congress to vote for it this time. A pretty uniquely big win to do. It doesn't seem like it's that big a deal, but to get a couple more voices on it is what you want in stuff like this, and that's momentum. And so we're hopeful to get it. There is a little bit of hesitation from the administration, I'll be honest, of the implementation, because they can do a lot of this just through the Health and Human Services and the agencies there in CMS, and it's we've got some concerns. It's not moving quickly enough, but everything's in place for our world for it to continue on. We're going to keep moving on this. I don't have an update right now on where things stand in the Senate, so we can work on getting that. We have an amazing industry in Utah, folks. In fact, next week we're doing a bill called the Research Park Bill, and it's going to get passed. And what that does is ensures the use of that area and that land near the University of Utah to be prioritized, and a lot more ownership to be able to continue on building this amazing industry that we have in Utah. It affects a lot of things, and we're well known for it. So thank you for calling in, Denise, and we'll keep providing more updates on that. Again, folks, *3 for questions, and *6 for newsletter. I'm doing what I don't always do and moving us through more quickly than normal. My teams are happy about that. Sometimes we get bogged down in longer questions, and we're only halfway through. So let's keep going. And just again, really appreciate you spending your evening on the line with us. We're going to Layton with Michelle. Michelle in Layton.
Hello, Representative Moore. Thank you for taking my question. I'm concerned about the lack of due process with the situation with the, I guess, boat bombings in the Caribbean.
Okay, yeah.
What's your opinion on the situation? I'm not going to get into the legalities of was it a war crime, I'm not going to get into any of that. Just the actual bombing themselves, I have a problem with.
Absolutely. This came up a lot in an in-person town hall not long ago in Layton, actually. I addressed this quite a bit on my last teletown hall, too. This spans several months. And, Michelle, it's great to be questioning, to be pushing, trying to understand this. I'm in the exact same boat, too, in a lot of ways. In fact, this was my first. I requested some classified briefings on this. When we came back after the shutdown, I took the opportunity to go down and read through some of the material and continue to work with my national security staff member on my team as we kind of hash this all out. Let me lay out something that I think might be interesting, and it's sort of fresh and puts it in a good perspective. If you saw news just recently, maybe the last couple of days, where we and our armed forces boarded a unflagged tanker in the Caribbean with a warrant, evaluated it, identified, worked on trying to identify. I don't know the outcomes of this. I haven't looked into it that much, but I understand that the initial operation and how things played out. But, I mean, I was like, even saw a blurb on CNN about that particular operation, and it was textbook. And it was to the process. It had the search warrant. And, again, tankers are they're obviously very large. It took some real manpower and some and military assets to be able to do this, which we're refocusing many of those military assets there. And we went through a process that is, I think, largely looked at as a very successful operation. We'll see what ultimately comes out of what they've uncovered and who it was. This stuff gets done with a lot of Russian illegal activity, Venezuela. And this, as we understand it, this ship was smuggling oil to Iran. So great operation. very supportive of it, and I think the international community will find a lot of value in it. The boat strikes have been, there's one really major concern that I have, and that is because of that activity that was going on, Great Britain, which is probably one of our closest allies on intelligence sharing, has ceased sharing some intelligence with us. And that's a concern for me, right? Having had a background in the intelligence world, we have these groups called the Five Eyes, 5 nations that share intelligence. We've got a long-standing level of trust. That was a really big concern for me. That's why I started to dig into this even more. There's questions about this, okay? And there has always been questions about this. Even when this type of operation was being done in the Middle East, even during Obama years, like what you have here is a designation of a DTO, designated terrorist organization, and lethal force. And the part that we're really dug into to try to better understand, and I hope this gets at a little bit of the essence of your question, is in these scenarios and in a lot of interaction between Congress and the White House and the administration, there's a 60-day time frame that if they take some type of military action, they've got a little bit of leeway to be able to do it, but they have to ultimately report to Congress and get approval from Congress for authorized use of military force. And that has been disregarded. That has not been done now, but it's not unprecedented because there were things like that done in the Middle East too. And so what the Trump administration has done with these boat strikes is drawn a real comparison and almost equivalency to work that was done, some of our strikes, drone strikes, lethal force used in the Middle East targeting terrorist organizations, and they've applied that to this region. And there's a lot of, question as to, is that the right approach? Here's what I'll say. We have a very strong Coast Guard. This has typically been a law enforcement issue with respect to drug smuggling. And I believe with a lot of effort and focus, we can do a good deterrence job on leveraging our Coast Guard as much as possible. And we saw that with this tanker that's smuggling oil right now. And so trending towards that direction, I think, can still be a strong deterrent and will ultimately come out of this and be able to evaluate. The administration's focused on Venezuela right now, right? And that's something to be cognizant of. There is fentanyl. That's not part of that drug trade. That drug trade with Venezuela is cocaine related, all bad. There's still a lot of work to be done on fentanyl, and I don't want us to lose the focus on fentanyl because that is killing many, many people in our nation. The secured border is definitely helping there, but the Mexican cartels are also very bad actors, and we need to make sure that we're creating that deterrence against them as well and not losing all the focus and just focusing on Venezuela. And so there's that situation at play too. So a lot going on. I want you to know that I'm involved in it, and I'm looking at it in a very broad perspective and trying to understand and get as much, working with my colleagues that are on certain committees that get this even more, and happy to continue to provide updates, and that's kind of where we are. But I want to also highlight the success of what we just accomplished on that oil tanker, and I think we can apply that to a lot of this in that region. So we're creating a strong deterrence and doing it in a way that is broadly supported and builds up with our allies. Thank you. Thanks for that question. Let's go to Logan with Jeremy. Jeremy and Logan.
Yeah.
Fire
Hello?
away. Yes, sir.
Okay, I have a question. Why is it that the Republican side of Congress and Senate can't act more like the Democrats when it comes to sticking together and making it for the president to accomplish? Like,
you cut out a little bit there, but I think I'll repeat kind of what I heard. Question as to why doesn't the GOP stick together with more consistent unity when you oftentimes see that from Democrats, and overall how it relates to the president accomplishing much of his agenda. Did I capture most of that? It kind of cut out.
Yeah.
You might not. Okay, good.
That's right.
Great question. So I joined in 2021, and Democrats all of a sudden had the White House, House, and Senate. They weren't expecting it. They didn't expect the Senate to flip, and all of a sudden they had this 2-year period where they were trying to accomplish a lot. And you should have seen how difficult it was for Democrats to stay together, right? They had many initiatives that didn't fail. I remember 20 of my Democrat colleagues basically telling Pelosi, "You don't have my vote. I'm getting on a plane. I'm getting out of here. You can do what you want, but you don't have my vote." Knowing I had to stay an extra 36 hours just so they knew we were going to be able to oppose this bill. But I still remember those 20 colleagues. It was a brave thing of them to do, to kind of push back against their own leadership, and they let you don't see that stuff, right? It's not that the Democrats all just have immense unity. There was a guy that voted with that was one of only 3 Democrats on committee that voted on a healthcare related bill. He was a kind of like an old school blue dog Democrat, moderate guy, represented Oregon, and he voted in favor of a more conservative approach to doing something on healthcare. I don't even remember the specifics of it. And Nancy Pelosi went after him. Got a primary challenger. He got ousted in the primary, and then that candidate ultimately lost to a Republican. And we did that too. We did that a lot. So there's so much that goes on back here. I'll say this. Taxes were going to expire at the end of this year. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act from 2017. And I've talked about that a lot on my town halls. But it's pro-growth tax policy. It helps grow revenues. It grows economy. It's a really strong bill. It's not the deficit creator that gets blamed to be. It's simply not. I'm happy to go through that if someone else wants to ask a question on that. But it's good policy. It was going to expire at the end of this year. It's largely agreed upon even by Democrats that most of it, they might not write exactly the way we would, but they get the concept of, if you lower the rate to competitive levels, you'll actually see more people keeping their tax domicile in the U.S., and so we gain more revenue, and it's good for the economy overall. Anyway, that was going to expire at the end of this year. We had some differing of opinions, and we went back and forth on how we were going to get this done, but we knew we were going to get it done. And it was just a matter of finalizing the bill and getting all of your specific priorities lined up. We said we would get it done by the 4th of July, and we got it done. That was 6 months before it was really required to do it, before taxes really were going to go back up because of the expiration at the end of this year. And we got it done 6 months early. Now, I know that's like your job and what you should do if you're going to accomplish something. And a lot of times we go to a stupid shutdown or we do things at midnight of the last minute. But in that scenario, we finished that early, and we had to do it with a narrow margin of 2 votes. A couple of people voted against it right at the last minute, but if they needed to, they would have come on board, but we could pass it with them. Their 2 votes no. We do stick together a lot, and it is a team aspect. But guess what? My leadership has always told me, hey, vote your district, vote your conscience, just don't surprise me. And so that was the leadership I always heard. That's what I try to share as I interact with my colleagues, as I'm now an elected member of the leadership team. It's not easy. Folks have got different districts. We have districts that are very, very, Republicans are favored by 30, 40 points. And others where we've got districts where Republicans have won where the Democrats are favored by 2 or 3 points. So it's just a fact and a reality. We're having a health care process right now to try to get to a point where we can land on something. It's difficult. And I like that, ultimately. I like that. I like the more individualistic approach when you're thinking about your district, and ultimately it's stuff you got to work through. It's obviously easier to have a 30 or 40 seat majority like you've seen in the past, but with a tiny little majority, it's really difficult ultimately. But we got one of the most hardest things done, and I look forward to another chance we can do something on that. One thing I will say though, there's a handful of people on both sides of the aisle that are here. They love the attention. They love to kind of get the sound bites. Their focus is what they're going to be doing on cable news and eventually lead into a lot of media careers. right? And it's a frustrating aspect. I don't know how else to say it. And sometimes they're really only thinking about themselves, and not about, the big picture, and it's tough. That part's tough to navigate, but that's always going to exist, especially in the world of social media where popularity sort of reigns free there, and it's something we'll navigate. So thanks for that question. And yeah, it's like any other family. There's always going to be little spats, but we'll keep at it and try to keep trying to get things accomplished. Let's go to Clearfield. Richard in Clearfield.
Hello. I am
Hello,
kind
sir.
of curious. Hello. All right. My biggest concern is with the economy and the rent hikes and everything that are going up, but the wages aren't. And there's no stop on the rent. There's no stop on the housing market going through the roof. Would you ever consider doing like what Ronald Reagan did and do a rent freeze? Because I know you can't, pull back all the interest as far as buying homes, but something's got to be done because people are going to become homeless.
Yeah, affordability just in general is obviously always on our minds. As I've polled the district for 5 years now at various levels, there's always two things that pop up big, and one of those is economy and cost of living, housing affordability. Those things always ping really high. And it kind of goes back to what I was saying before with a hot economy and things generally very good with the economic indicators in Utah. You see things heat up. There's an aspect of the tax bill, the reconciliation bill we did this summer, that was looked at. It's something we haven't really done before. Was no tax on car loan interest. Ideas like that, they hope to move us in the right direction. For a long time, you've had deductibility with your homeowners' costs and the mortgage costs for that interest, but renters don't get relief on that side of things, and that's a big concern for me because, as we see more folks renting, younger folks renting, and not being able to get into a starter home, it's like tough now, but there's going to be a whole generation of folks that, as they look towards back in the rear view when they're at a certain point in their career and they weren't able to gain as much equity because homeownership has been such a positive equity gain for overall upward mobility, there's a real concern there. I believe that's, and as I've interacted with our Utah governor, Governor Cox, I mean, this hasn't just been a talking point for him. This is a sincere effort that he's really tried to push. But what I'm reluctant to do, and what the governor is ultimately reluctant to do, is really force every single municipality to recognize how big of a problem this is and to make some changes. Here's the thing: every single community knows there's housing affordability, but every single community doesn't want to necessarily add the supply with smaller units and the potential congestion that comes from that to their own community. And you can't really force that, and there needs to be, that level of decision making at the lowest level, at the most fundamental level of government. But that is where a lot of these issues thrive. So here's one idea, though. So with all that said, here's one idea that we're working on. I'm the lead of something called the SHARE Act. And I have a lot of like if we could make a fundamental shift into something like this and do more of this instead of look at subsidies from taxpayer dollars, federal dollars coming back in a form of a subsidy that never really decreases costs. This is something that I think is it's exciting for me to delve into. The SHARE Act is pretty simple. There's a company out there, there's several companies and people that are doing this. What it does is it allows people to leverage, market investment, not federal subsidies to be able to help get into a down payment. They're able to leverage other investors' money to help get into that down payment where they can start building their own equity. And at some point, there'll be a shared equity nature of it with just an institutional investor, and then that person will take their, it's actually what I've seen examples of. It's not high level percentages. They're actually quite small, like 5 to 7%, but institutional investors like that kind of predictability. And then the homeowner gets significantly higher returns, and they were able to leverage that investment, get into their home, get into their condo, and then build on that. You're typically for, this is typically for your first house. You have to be at a certain level of income, of AMI, and it's just, I'm not explaining all the specific details, but what I'm saying is it's another shift in the way we think about helping people get into their home. There's no downside to this. Institutional investors make, a good, solid, predictable return, and individuals that are getting into homes are able to start something that they wouldn't have been able to start otherwise. Those types of things are game changers. I remember just really, really cringing at the idea of when Vice President Kamala Harris was running for president. She threw out first-time homebuyers were going to subsidize $25,000. Hey, folks, that is just going to make houses go up $25,000. That's time and time again we've proven that that's how things work in this economy. But if we're able to just use existing market opportunities out there that isn't inflationary with subsidies being thrown at something, then you're able to access and move on, get into that next home and get there. So those are sincere things that I'm leading and working on. The idea comes from philanthropy, social impact type of folks back home in Utah that presented ideas to me and opened up some really cool opportunities for us to think through this. And we're gonna keep exploring it. And again, these don't solve things overnight, but I'm about changing the way folks think. I'm going to as many Democrats as I can to say, hey, I know you say you care about housing affordability. Look, this is an option. Consider this. Let's get on this. And we're trying to build as much co-sponsorship as possible. That's why I've been such a big fan of ESOPs. Love ESOPs. I think there's 58 in the state of Utah. Those are employee-owned, employee ownership. You get a little bit of a piece of the company, small amounts at first, build some retention. You're a big player in your own company, and you see people able to make equity in the American dream and what the work that they do, not just a salary. That's another really important aspect with regards to wage growth, as you mentioned. All right, we are coming up on, oh my goodness, we're coming up on time here. We will go to Jairo. Yep, Jairo in Logan. Jairo in Logan.
Hey, good evening there, Congressman. Thank you for taking my questions and being here. I have a couple of questions. First of all, I supported your campaign. I voted for you, but I feel a little bit betrayed in a sense. I'm in my mid-30s. You supported H.R. 1 without much of fuss, really, while it adds, $3.5 trillion to our national debt. As somebody that's in probably, early kind of in their life, I feel like my generation is going to bear this burden forever. So, that on top of, increasing costs in rent, increasing costs at the grocery store, I feel like you can't leave Smith's without, paying $75 for a couple of bags of groceries. In the meantime, it seems like you can still write off the purchase of a private jet in your taxes, but I can't write off, my mortgage or rent that I'm paying. So, in that sense, I just wanted to ask you what the fiscal responsibility was in that.
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. I always love being able to engage on this. let me throw out a few things here. So first off, you mentioned and I know you definitely can. Just so it's Claire, you get to write off your interest on your mortgage, right? So your home costs and things like that. Now you can also do a type of car loan as it qualifies for American-made vehicles, which does not have to be American brand, but American-made. There's other areas there, no tax on tips, overtime, those types of things were directed at relief of everyday Americans, and that has been a big focus. Every tax policy, even to the child tax credit, and how the standard deduction works. The child tax credit and the standard deduction of that bill are almost 75% of the entirety of it, and those two aspects, they're income capped. So if you make over a certain income, and it's not like a significantly high element, it's in the ranges of $200,000 to $400,000. Like, you don't get the advantage of it, right? So most everything we did in that entire bill has been income capped to means test and only focus on middle and lower income Americans. A lot of lies about that bill. I'm going to flat out say it. To say that it's for the billionaires, go look at what the Washington Post said about Bernie Sanders continually saying that after 2017. It's not often that the Washington Post will go give 4 Pinocchios to a Democrat lawmaker, but they did in this case, and I don't know why he keeps saying it. It's pretty disgusting to just see how much he can blatantly lie about things, and he's got this big voice, and it's already been refuted by his entire side of the media world. And so this is not a bill geared towards billionaires. It's just not. But it's an easy tagline, and that's what gets said. Let me stay on it real quick, because you mentioned that it's $3 trillion in deficit creation. The Tax Cuts and Jobs Act in 2017 was also said it was going to be a $1.5 trillion deficit creation. And as the CBO continued to correct and update its baseline, it was not the case. It was not that deficit reduction that they did. Why? Because the overall concept of when you lower tax rates, you make them competitive, and you see revenue growth because you have more consistent U.S. domiciled investment. You also see companies saving money from certain tax deductions. They're able to go out and hire more people, spend more money, create more investments. All of those actions that take place, it's an activity-based economy. All of those extra actions also collects tax revenue because that new individual is now paying income tax, that new hire and that kind of thing. So the $3 trillion or so that was said that this bill would create a deficit, I am confident, since it's basically a repeat of 2017, just making it consistent and moving forward, will not be the case. And they assume, the CBO in that number assumes a 1.8% growth rate. We've seen a 3% growth rate just in Q2. We anticipate outperforming 1.8 by a significant margin. We assume 2.6%, and it actually, once you get to 2.6%, the scoring of that makes it basically deficit neutral. And a lot of that stuff has to play out for the next few years. But we know that the concepts that get scored through these types of bills are not always accurate. It's the best system that we've got and that we can use, and I would prefer to use scoring over a longer period of time than just a 10-year window, but it is what it is, and I'm confident that you'll see from that bill and the aspects of it being an overall good growth factor in the economy. But we'll talk about that as the years go on. But we've seen it since 2017. We've seen it be refuted, and I anticipate being able to do that well. Tariffs are a big question right now. I'm on the trade subcommittee. There's you can directly look at certain types of tariffs that are sort of micro-focused on certain issues. That's why ultimately the Trump administration decided recently to pull back on 200 different food products. For one, like, the U.S. consumes a lot of coffee, coffee, we can only produce 5% of it, right? Hawaii can only produce just a little bit of what our ultimate consumption is, and therefore it made no sense. We can't produce it. We're not near the equator, so we got to pull that back. And I'm a voice. I'm constantly working with the administration. Great relationship with the trade ambassador on making sure that I identify what issues the Utahns have. We've gotten things done behind the scenes for Procter & Gamble and other producers in our country, in our district, to make sure that they can maintain good operations, good strong job growth, and everything like that. So I think you'll see more of that. And there's a court case that's coming up in a couple months, and I think the best thing for the administration to do would be like, hey, we've got some good things accomplished. We've built some new trade deals with new nations that are going to be positive for us. It's good for them as well, and we've settled into some good places. Let's make that law. Let's put that into legislation, and then let's give some big predictability to the economy. Congress would not go as far as Trump administration does on a lot of these tariffs, but if the court case is ruled that IEEPA was unconstitutionally used by the administration, I think there's a real opportunity to be able to say, to push on this. We're already pushing on this. Like I said, we passed a lot of trade stuff this week. But tariffs don't create the type of inflation that we saw during the Biden years. No way, shape, or form. We were in the double digits, highest we've seen, at least in my lifetime. We're not seeing that inflation. Unfortunately, a lot of that stays. But we are, I recognize that there's still a lot of affordability issues, and I hope we can continue to get these going in the right direction. It's not all solved with the magic wand, but when you get energy costs down and make these tariffs more targeted and be able to ease up on some of them, as the administration has been doing over the last few months, it gets us into a better spot. Okay, that's a lot there. I appreciate the candor. I'm always going to give you exactly the way I feel about things and be forthright and be back with data and keep pushing and reaching out to us and just look. One, I hope we get some more snow. It's always a more fun season. The last few years we have had snow on Christmas morning, and it has been absolutely magical for my kids. So hopefully we get a little bit of that. But with or without, folks, please have an amazing, wonderful Christmas, New Year's holidays. If you celebrate Hanukkah, there's a really neat event at the Capitol this weekend as well to kick off those festivities. Just have a wonderful holiday season. Be with family. Find a way to build on a tradition that you've done before. I can't wait to be back home and be able to spend some time with the fam for a couple of weeks while we shouldn't have major disruptions with the congressional schedule. Thanks for being involved. Thanks for engaging, complimenting, criticizing, whatever you got. I love being able to work with y'all. So thank you, and have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas.